My name is Andy Cairns. I play in a band called Therapy. We are originally from Northern Ireland in County Antrim, and we have been playing music for over 25 years. We have wonderful memories of the Disquiet festival, shows in Budapest as well. My best memories are always from festivals. We have only done one club show before, which was in the year 2000. In Budapest, we had a band called Clutch from America opening for us. My favourite memories, though, are always the festivals because we have always such an amazing day. Our latest album is called Disquiet, and it came out in 2015. Disquiet is a concept album of sorts. It is based around the protagonist of the album Troublegum, which Therapy released in 1994. The reason that we did this was that we had made so many different styles of records that were so far away from the Troublegum album because we wanted to get away from that style and do something different. But we did a 20th anniversary tour of the Troublegum album, and so many people came to the shows, and the band enjoyed doing the shows so much. We thought, can we make an album like Troublegum again with really good melodies, really good guitar riffs? Now, the thing is, because we've been around so long and there are so many bands of young guys and young girls making this kind of music now, the only way to make it seem legitimate was to base it on the character from the original album. So we had an idea of what the guy who wrote Troublegum, the guy that sang all those songs about being alone and being isolated, was up to now. That meant that we had a starting point for the lyrics, and it also meant that we could justify, again, going back to short melodic songs like in the 90s. The history of Therapy, from the band that everyone knows from the 90s, probably the most famous Therapy, the Troublegum one. 20 years since then, we have made many different albums. It's been such an interesting career for us. We have had really big success with albums that sold lots in the millions, and then we have had albums that we made with different lineups that no one noticed. The main difference, I think, of the records was the styles. We never wanted to make the same record twice. So, for example, after we made Troublegum, we made an album called Infernal Love, which has many strings on it. The lyrics are more poetic. The music is not as heavy as Troublegum, and maybe not as catchy, not as melodic. We've made albums where we concentrate on the rhythm, such as 1999's Suicide Pact You First, and 2009's Crooked Timber, which is very influenced by German rock, such as Can, Neu, bands like that. One thing I will say is that deep down we've always sounded like the same band, but we've just added so many crazy influences that to the people that are fans of our early 90s material, it was maybe too much to ask them to like. But I think we have come almost in a full circle where we have gone and explored every single kind of sound we want to now we're back to something like a classic Therapy sound again. The reason why Therapy has a specific sound, especially the drum sound, is in the early days, our original member, Fife Ewing, and ourselves, we used to play concerts in very small punk gigs. Most of the time the drums weren't mic'd up. It was just two little speakers, a microphone, and then all the amplifiers. And the three of us hit on this discovery that if you tuned the snare drum really, really high, it cut through the mix. So if you were playing in a tiny little pub, you could still hear the snare over the guitars. We also liked a lot of bands like No Means No and Fugazi, and they used the same sound. Now that became part of the trademark, along with the bass guitar sound and in the sort of dark vocals. The drums became very much a part of that. When the second drummer joined, Graham Hopkins, he initially did not like that drum sound. Even though he wanted to join Therapy, he wanted to bring his own sound, and that caused a few problems because the sound wasn't as powerful as it had been in the early Therapy records. The current lineup of Therapy, and this is one of the great, wonderful coincidences, is we now have a drummer called Neil Cooper. Now, when Therapy started, one of the bands that we first supported in 1990 was a rock band called The Beyond. Neil Cooper was the drummer in The Beyond, and he had that sound, exactly the same sound as Therapy in The Beyond. And the two drummers, Fife and Neil, really admired each other's work. We always liked Neil as a drummer. Now, when he stepped into therapy in 2003 to become the new drummer, he already knew what we liked as people, and we already knew the guy. And that's why the lineup of therapy now is the most similar to it was in the 90s, the sound on the drums. Well, the thoughts behind it, the drum patterns, was always very, very unlike other metal and punk bands that we knew. The three of us, we liked very much. We liked, as well as the punk bands, we liked Public Enemy, that used samples. We liked the sound of the drums. We liked the German band called Can, especially Jackie Leibowitz, the drummer. We liked the drumming of James Brown, and we loved the drumming on Fugazi records. So in the studio, we would maybe take a riff and a song, and rather than maybe just giving a generic drum beat that everybody else would use, we would use something maybe from a techno record, a hip-hop record, a drum and bass record. So for example, our very first single is a song called Me Abstract. It's got a hypnotic Eastern guitar riff, almost an Eastern sound, but the drum pattern that we took was a drum pattern from an electronic New Beat record, a New Beat Belgian dance music. For something like Turn off the album Trouble Gum, there was like an early Dr. Dre kind of drum beat which we took and played on real drums. And that's something that we've kept up. On the new album Disquiet, there's a track called Helpless Still Lost, and the drum pattern on that comes from a Dre record as well, still played on a live kit. It also meant that we didn't want the drums to sound mechanical, so when we recorded them, we spent a lot of time getting the sound right. But then they had to sound like real rock and roll drums, not like a machine. The most we ever spent on drums, we did an album in 1992 called Nurse, and there's a song on called Teeth Grinder, and we spent 2 weeks alone on the drums, which is the longest we've ever spent. And if you listen to that record now, you can listen to every single piece of hardware, the hi-hats, the bass drum, all have got their unique sound. The bass drum sounds like almost like a 909 drum machine. The hi-hats have got a little bit of effect on them so that they sound like an electronic machine, but they're all played live. I'm inspired by everything really, but I think I've always really, really liked reading. I think most of my inspiration comes from reading books, and it can be anything from a crime thriller from the 50s to something by Samuel Beckett or William Faulkner that really, really makes me look at things a different way. Secondary influence would be probably movies, but my first is definitely books. I studied English literature at school, and that was my main study at school. And I think whenever I left, it stayed with me. It was something I always liked. I always bought books. And probably I've got nearly as many books in my house as I have albums. Well, my favorite movies, I like to get lost in movies, and I like just to melt into the movie. And for that, my favorites are Tarkovsky and Bela Tarr. And I try and watch Satan Tango once a year. You know, it's 7 hours long, but I've got it on. I've got it on DVD, and I try and watch it once a year because I just think it's such a wonderful film. He picks such interesting actors, and everything takes time. It's not rushed, but you lose yourself. You forget you're even sitting watching a movie. It's like watching a painting in front of you. It even gives me goosebumps just thinking of some of the scenes in it. I think my favourite might even be Damnation, which is one of the first movies that I ever saw of his. And just all the industrial machinery in the background outside the bedroom, it's almost in time with the space. It creates a world which is his world, which you inhabit for the duration of the movie. And it's the same with Tarkovsky. You know, I like watching films that Tarkovsky makes where things like nostalgia, where you live in Tarkovsky's world for 2.5 hours. And I prefer that to maybe watching a movie with Robert De Niro or Leonardo DiCaprio, where whenever I see those people, as much as I admire them, if they come into a room, I don't think that's the character. I think, oh, there's Robert De Niro. So it makes it a bit more difficult, whereas with the films of Bela Tarr, he's got such interesting characters. The faces are lined and distorted, and they remind me more of painting than they do of like modern cinema. But they exist in a world of their own, and that's why I like them. We don't engage directly politically with any particular party or movement because I think that's a personal issue, and I know all three members of the band are political, and we've got different views. Most of us lean on the left, that's where we lean. Well, the band leans on the left, but we're never specific about which parties. But with the likes of therapy and politics, when the band started, we had a Protestant, a Catholic, and a drummer of mixed parentage, one for a Catholic mother and a Protestant father. And that alone was quite unusual in Northern Ireland, and that was enough of a political statement as regards the situation in Northern Ireland, because people thought the two sides didn't get on, whereas you had a band with these different people that were friends. We rehearsed together, and it was also, there were difficult times as well, because there was an awful lot of trouble in Northern Ireland at the time. That the city was dead. Belfast was dead after 8 o'clock in the evening because there was bombings, so people didn't want to go to concerts. There were concerts, but there were not as many as any other cities in the world. And recently I talked to a friend of mine in Paris after the attacks in Paris, and I said, "How is Paris?" And he went, "Well, even to sit outside a cafe and have a cup of coffee is seen as an act of resistance." And then I said, well, we grew up through that, because we didn't agree with any particular side. Myself and my generation wanted peace. So for us to go to concerts, that was our act. Our parents would say, "Don't go out after 9 o'clock, it's dangerous." But that was our rebellion. And when we went to concerts in Northern Ireland, there were a great many metal and punk bands came to Belfast, even though it was dangerous. The Clash came, the Buzzcocks came, the Damned, Metallica, Anthrax, even bands like the Smiths and the Jesus and Mary Chain. And people would go from both sides of the community, and there would never be any trouble. And I think whenever it came to writing about Northern Ireland, we wanted to look more at the human politics, because beneath all the struggles for power, there were still people like us who knew what it was like to grow up with bombs, with army on the street. And what we wanted was to do things that other kids in the UK did. We wanted to be able to go out late after 9 o'clock at night without being scared. We wanted to be able to walk to other parts of the city without being in danger. So all our politics, yes, it does touch on Northern Ireland in a lot of therapy songs, but it's more human politics than party politics. For tonight's concert at the A38 in Budapest, I think we haven't played a club show for many years. So we will play probably 7 songs off Disquiet, but we play for 1.5 hours. The rest will be songs that hopefully people know, from Infernal Love, from Nurse, and from Troublegum. They will be the ones that maybe people know the best. So we will play maybe the songs that anyone that was a fan in the 90s will know, but also people that want to hear some stuff off the new album. There'll be 7 songs there for that. So it'll be a good mix for everybody, and hopefully it will all sit well together. I'm a huge fan of Chelsea Football Club. I have been a season ticket holder now for 22 years. I wasn't a fan whenever we were winning things in 2004 and 2005. I've been a fan from whenever we were always low down in the table to start with. But I think this year I cannot understand how it's the amount of talent we have on display, the amount of wages the players get, for the team to capitulate and surrender so badly. I've been at many games this season too and seen it from my own eyes, and I'm astounded. My friends that support the team too, we don't understand. I didn't want Mourinho to go. I think he's a good manager, and what I think is sad is that apparently some players wanted him to go, and now the players that want him to go, they also want to leave the club. So why didn't they just sell the players and keep the manager? But at the end of the day, regardless of players or manager, I support Chelsea, I support the club, and the club comes first. So if they have, even without Mourinho, without any superstar players, I'll still be going. My wife asked me, because she sees me coming home from the games, we drew again, we lost again, and she hasn't seen that in many years. And she asked me last week, if Chelsea did get relegated to the Championship, would you still go? Would you still buy your season ticket? And I said, of course I will. I'm a Chelsea fan and I always will be.